that's in plain view, that's a little different. Like if I saw somebody outside beating up on their girlfriend, that's a little different. I'm not going to call the police. I'm going to fucking pull a gun on them and tell them to stop is what I'm going to do. But if somebody called the police because of that, you know, that's fine. I understand that. If you see somebody, if you witness something that's pretty serious, like somebody just I'm talking about just beating somebody, but not like, then you have people just joking around and they call the police and the police show up over nothing. So in general, people just need to mind their fucking business, but the government even tries to get people. I mean, they pay for commercials. They even have them at the fucking movies now. I've talked about this, that you go see a movie and they have in the commercials for the movie, they have people talking about their neighborhoods and how if they see something that's just a little different, or it's like if they see a car that's never been in that fucking neighborhood before, you know, because you're going to somebody's house that you've never been to, and they should call the police. So the police should make sure that you're supposed to be there or something. I mean, it's fucking nuts. And people aren't, I don't know. There's some people that support that shit. You know, the people that want to call the police all the time. But I don't think the majority of people do. And they don't realize how fucked up things are. So you have people calling CPS all the time. You've had the kids going to the park or at the park alone or walking home from the park, or the lady that worked at McDonald's and her kid would have to sit at McDonald's and there was a park across the street and she let the girl was like 9 and this is during the day and there's a bunch of parents there and other kids, and she let the kid go to the park, and there was a lady that thought that that's not okay. So she takes it upon herself to call the police. And then there was some other lady that called the police because some guy looked at the kids in a certain way or something. I don't know. Maybe he looked at the kids like, oh, look at the cute kids. I mean, what the fuck, man? Like she knows that in her mind, and this is, again, it kind of goes back to the media, that everybody's a pedophile. You know, again, when you look at it in terms of percentage and population, it's very small. And, you know, like if I see a cute kid, I'll smile or whatever. And, you know, I don't have kids. And so what? I mean, that means what? You know, like I'll call the police, be like, hey, that guy, he smiled at he walked by those kids and smiled at them or said hi. So that means, like, you know, call the fucking police. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you have that. You have mothers getting arrested all the time for stuff like that, because now they're not just returning the kids home. In a lot of cases, they're taking the kids away and they're arresting the parents. And how you can arrest the parents for that, because they're saying it's child neglect. And that's what they do. And I've talked about this before when we did a show where we just focused on CPS, is when you look at the laws, just in general, this is not the laws regarding CPS, but you look at laws in general and how they're open-ended and how it can be interpreted so many different ways, and they write them that way on purpose. They don't write laws to be specific, which would make sense if you had a specific law. I understand there are different scenarios. So when you write a law, you're trying to cover every scenario that you want to cover with this law, but you can't. Well, obviously they can, but if you want to have any kind of fair society, which I don't believe there's a fair society with a government, but we all know that. So, not that we all know that there's not a fair society with a government, but that I have those, anybody who's been listening tonight knows that I feel that way. But so what they'll do is they'll say something like child neglect. They're not specific. I haven't read the law on child neglect, but I'm sure, and it depends on the state, but how do you say what's child neglect and what's not? Because you can't. I mean, you could get very descriptive on what child neglect is, and that if you don't do this, certain things, and have the law based on that, and not have these open-ended laws. But when you have an open-ended law like child neglect, you can fucking say whatever you want as child neglect. You can say that, well, letting your kid out unsupervised that's 9 years old during the day is child neglect. Leaving your 10-year-old at home at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock while you go to the store, if they want to, they can say that's child neglect. And we all know it's not. It's ridiculousness. Now, some parents and some people are buying into this shit because what the fuck is happening is what I just said, and which is the point of this whole show, is that they're bringing up kids, not parents, but not parents when it comes to this, but they're bringing up kids. Well, parents will be like that, I guess, or maybe some of them have started to, because you look at the generation that are in their early 20s now. But they're bringing up kids to think that that is wrong, that, if you left a 10-year-old home alone, that's wrong. I mean, I'm trying to remember how old I was when I was left home alone. I remember my uncle when I was like 5, and I kind of freaked out. We were at my cousin's house, and it was my cousins and my brother, and my cousins were, one's a year and a half older and one's the same age, and then my brother's 3 years younger. So maybe he wasn't there because he would have been like 2. But he just left to go to the store real quick. And I got a little, nervous. That was at 5, though. But besides that, the youngest I think I was home alone, I mean, when my mother started working and I came home from school every day and was home alone, for a couple hours, I think I was in elementary school, and it wasn't a big deal. And they talked about it at school like it wasn't a big deal, maybe 8 or 9, and you'd be home for a couple hours. It's like, now I don't know what if the school would report you. I don't know. And it would be, if I had the time, I'd like to find out all this information from the Clark County School District here in Las Vegas of when they call CPS, what they call them over, and somehow interview them. But even though they're public fucking servants and they're getting paid off of money that comes out of my pocket, of course everybody else's as well, and I know probably what I pay in their salary might be a fucking penny, but as a whole, I'm getting a lot out in taxes. And don't think because we don't have state taxes that your money doesn't go to pay for shit, because they distribute a lot of that money to states. So it doesn't matter where it goes. You're paying for whatever. I mean, you can't break it down and say, well, I pay specifically for this. As far as it is you pay a little of everything. Maybe it's a penny here, a penny there, whatever. But as far as it really is, whether you pay state tax or just federal tax, you're paying for a little bit of everything, because you can't break it down like that and say, well, my money went here, because it goes all into, all together, except for, you have the FICA and whatever, Social Security. But I'm saying as far as just your federal tax, it all goes to the same shit. And, I don't think they look at my paycheck and say, well, your federal tax, we're going to take that, and that's going to pay half of that person's salary. It all goes into the same pile of corrupt funds that's extorted from people every day. So, as far as I see it, these people are getting paid from money extorted by the government. So they're the recipients of extortion money, but they don't feel that they have to talk to you. I've seen the people that, like Dave Ridley in New Hampshire, who go and try to ask bureaucrats questions. And a lot of times they just keep walking and ignore you. So why shouldn't, if you start asking them certain questions, now if you ask general questions, they don't care. But if you start asking them questions that they don't want to answer because they know that the answers are fucked up, like if I start asking the Clark County School District, well, at what age is it appropriate for a kid to stay home alone? And if you found out about it, would you call CPS if a kid was staying home alone at 8 years old for a couple hours after school? I'm sure they wouldn't answer that question. So you have, I'm sure the schools are very involved with CPS and reporting things. That's probably your biggest reporter of stuff, I would think, is schools. Probably more than neighbors and family is schools. And that, along with everything else they do in schools, and we'll get to that, that's just a bonus. That's another thing. Government schools, or even private schools for that matter, serve a lot of purposes. And it seems like the main purpose that they're supposed to serve is the purpose that they serve the least of, is educating kids. But instead, they're indoctrinating, they're watching, they're collecting data, they're doing all of these other things. So they're finding out, well, who's home when you go home? Oh, well, nobody. Well, maybe we should call CPS. I bet CPS has so many fucking cases that they have a backlog. I don't know. And maybe they can up their budget that way so they can fuck with more families. And then you have the foster families. And I'm not going to put all foster families down. They do get paid for it. I'm sure you have some great foster families out there that do it because they want to help. But the majority of where kids end up, they end up worse off than if they would have been with their parents, especially when the allegations that they, or the reason why they took the kids away in the first place, was for something stupid or something that they couldn't validate, or even maybe it warranted, it was somewhat not bad, but there's things that I think you shouldn't do, but it's not bad enough where you should be taking your fucking kids away, because you're putting them in worse environments and they should be with their parents. So it's a way of the government not only getting in the life of your kids, but they're getting in your life as well.